Chapter 1. The Hidden Oasis of Arabia. When we think of early Christian martyrs, we usually picture the Roman Colosseum. Gladiators, lions, and crowds cheering from the stands.
Yeah,
Or secret underground meetings in the dark catacombs of Rome.
exactly.
But what if one of the most heroic stands for faith didn't happen in Europe at all? Instead, it took place in the burning sands of the Arabian desert, decades before the rise of Islam.
Really?
I didn't know there were Christians in ancient Arabia. Most people don't. But in the 5th and 6th centuries, southern Arabia was home to a thriving Christian community. At the center of it was a wealthy oasis city called Najran. Najran wasn't a collection of tents. It was a massive trade hub surrounded by granite cliffs, lush date palms, and busy caravan routes. So these weren't monks hiding in caves? No, these were everyday people. Weavers, merchants, bronzesmiths, farmers, and priests. They built houses, ran businesses, raised families, and had been Christians for generations. They lived in peace, trading spices and silks between Rome and India. But this peaceful oasis was about to face a storm. Chapter 2. The Invading King and the Siege. In the year 523 AD, a new king named Dhu Nuwas seized power over the Himyarite kingdom to the south. Dhu Nuwas converted to Judaism and wanted to unite all of Arabia under his political and religious banner. But Najran stood in his way. The Christians refused to pledge allegiance to his new order. So Dhu Nuwas marched north with a massive army of cavalry and laid siege to the city. A desert siege sounds brutal. It was. Water ran low, food dwindled, and the walls were surrounded. Yet, the citizens of Najran held out. They defended their city with bravery. But after several weeks, Dhu Nuwas realized he couldn't take the city by force. So he used trickery. He sent a messenger with a peace treaty, signed with his royal seal. He promised that if they opened the gates, not a single drop of blood would be spilled, and they could keep their property and live in peace. And they believed him? Hoping to save their families from starvation, the elders opened the gates. But the moment Dhu Nuwas soldiers marched inside, they tore up the treaty. They seized the city's leaders, ransacked the homes, and rounded up the terrified population. Dhu Nuwas had no intention of keeping his word. Chapter 3. The Ultimatum and the Burning Pits. The king set up his tent in the center of the city and issued an ultimatum. To show he was serious, he ordered his soldiers to dig massive trenches in the middle of Najran.
Wait, what were the trenches for?
They filled them with wood, poured oil, and lit them. The fire was so hot that the heat forced the crowds back. It was a literal valley of fire. Dhu Nuwas demanded they throw their scriptures into the flames and spit on the cross.
This is terrifying. Did anyone give in?
A few did, out of sheer terror. But then, a strange, quiet boldness fell over the city. The vast majority of the weavers, mothers, blacksmiths, and children stood shoulder to shoulder and refused. They looked at the burning pits and refused to deny their lord. Dhu Nuwas was furious. He started with the leaders. He brought forward Harith, the governor of the city. Harith was 95 years old, a wealthy noble respected by everyone. Dhu Nuwas offered him his life and riches if he would make a small gesture of denial. But Harith looked the king in the eye.
I have lived a long life and enjoyed its blessings. Do you think at the end, I will trade my eternal king for a few more days of breath? That is incredibly bold.
It was. Harith turned to his fellow citizens and told them to stand strong, saying this fire would burn for a moment, but their victory would last forever. The soldiers executed Harith right there, but his death only strengthened their spirit. Chapter 4. The Courage of Ruhayma and the Mothers. Next, the persecution turned toward the women of Najran, whose boldness stunned the soldiers. One famous figure was a wealthy widow named Ruhayma, known for her charity. When she was brought before the king, she refused to bow. Dhu Nuwas tried to humiliate her, ordering his soldiers to strip her ornaments, shave her head, and parade her through the streets. But Ruhayma walked with her head held high, calling out to the women, "Do not weep for me. Today, I go to meet my bridegroom. Do not let this king take away your crown of faith." She actually cheered them on? Yes. She saw her martyrdom not as a tragedy, but as her crowning moment. Her boldness was so contagious that the soldiers rushed her back and executed her on the spot to silence her. And then, the mass executions began at the trenches. Historical accounts describe mothers holding their infants, walking voluntarily toward the flames. In one account, a young mother stood at the edge of the pit, holding her toddler. She hesitated for a split second, looking at her baby's face, feeling the heat. But her child looked up and said,
"Do not fear, mother. Go forward, for the fire is cool, and the garden of God is right before us."
"Wait," the child spoke. The ancient records say it was a moment of supernatural strength. The mother smiled, held her baby tight, and stepped into the fire. Over the course of a few days, thousands of everyday Christians were thrown into the burning pits. The city was turned to ash, and its entire Christian population was wiped out. Chapter 5: Conquered Yet Victorious. This is a devastating story. It feels like evil won completely. It certainly looked that way. The king rode away believing he had erased Christianity from Arabia. But this brings us to the deepest paradox of the Christian story, the same one we see in the book of Revelation. How does the army of the Lamb conquer? Not by killing their enemies, but by dying for them. In the eyes of the world, the martyrs of Najran were defeated, crushed, and forgotten in a dusty desert pit. But in reality, their boldness shook the entire ancient world. News of their sacrifice leaked out of Arabia. It traveled to the Roman Empire and across the Red Sea to the kingdom of Aksum in Ethiopia. The Christian world was so moved by their extraordinary faith that they united to put an end to Dhu Nuwa's reign. Within a few years, his empire fell, and the memory of the martyrs became a beacon of hope. Even the Quran, written a century later, references the people of the ditch, remembering the believers who were burned for their faith in God. So their story survived. It survived because you cannot bury a faith that is willing to die. These weren't soldiers with shields. These were everyday people who chose loyalty and boldness over compromise and survival. They showed that ultimate power isn't held by kings with armies, but by ordinary hearts filled with extraordinary love for Christ. Chapter 6: Conclusion. The story of Najran invites us to look at our own lives. Most of us will never face a burning pit or an invading army. But we all face moments where we are tempted to compromise what we believe just to fit in, to avoid conflict, or to keep our comfort. The martyrs of Najran remind us that some things are worth holding on to, even when everything else is stripped away. They teach us to live with open hands, trusting that our lives are secure in the hands of a God who is wiser than our fears. And that is the story of the martyrs of Najran. Thanks for watching this video. We believe the story of the Church is a unified narrative of everyday people carrying the light of Christ into the darkest corners of history. If you want to support us in making more animated videos like this one, you can like, comment, and share this video so others can be inspired too. Your support helps us keep these stories free for anyone, anywhere. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you in the next video.